If you ask to say, if you ask him to say a few words, he will speak for an hour. So that happens with the linguists, but we are here to listen the great scholar of our times, Professor Harish Narang sir. I have seen him since my student days, and I have learned many things from his scholarships, and he is such a great scholar. There is no doubt about that. One of the very few scholars that I have come across, and I also have served in the Urdu advisory board of the Sahitya Academy, and I have heard many stories, even in his back, about his scholarship, about his academic contributions, about all he has done in academics. As you have said that when I look at the invitation that you sent me, that Gandhian School of Democracy and Socialism, and that has become very relevant in today's world. And the topic that you have selected for this evening, it is much relevant when we talk about times of post-truth, that with content of the literature and commitment. It is very pertinent, and not much have been done in this area. And many people recently, I was going through some of the articles and found that though it has a long history, but not much attention has been given on this aspect of literature and commitment in post-truth era. When you look at the subject matter, that the problem is that the relativization of the fact that claim that knowledge is merely a product of power, history, and perspective is a core aspect of present-day ideological thinking. Critical theories have been unable to respond to this challenge because their critique has been direct against the opposite claim, namely the naturalization of the fact. When we talk about, we can see we are living in the age of post-truth. This concept has become intensely popular in media and academic circles. As you have rightly pointed out in the introduction, Randhir, that we are living in a world of falsehood, what we are going to achieve from there, which in part explains this appropriate number of books and articles published on this phenomenon in recent years, and that is we have to look at. And in an effort to bring some clarity and to avoid possible misunderstanding, I'm sure the talk of today will shed lights on this aspect of this post-truth event and in the context of literature and commitment. And by definition, we all know that it indicates a chronological sequence, a moment after a specific situation or event. So this is the event that refers to a time in which the specific idea, that is in the case of truth, has become redundant and therefore can safely be disregarded. So this is not only a case when we look at the things in the falsehood. And I was reading Sam Leith, who has written in 2017, rightly points out that a liar honors the truth by denying it. And Miranda in 2007 called hermeneutical injustice, which refers to those cases when someone is not able to make sense of an experience due to prejudicial flaws in shared resources for social interpretation. Or in other words, we can say that when someone is harmed by a sort of gap in collective understanding, which makes one's own experiences unintelligible. So in this context, I am sure Professor Narang's talk will shed light and will become, we will be getting enriched by his scholarship and with his thought-provoking talk that he is going to deliver. So with these few words, I would like to welcome Professor Harish Narang sir to deliver his talk.
May I begin?
Yes, please.
Good evening, friends. Let me begin by thanking Gandhian School of Democracy and Socialism, particularly Dr. Randhir Gautam and Professor Aanand Kumar for inviting me to make this presentation this evening. I am also thankful to them for asking Professor WARSI to preside over this thing. I have known him for a long time and I have a lot of respect for his scholarship. I also want to say that both Dr. Gautam and Professor WARSI in their introductions have been very, very generous to me. I am basically a teacher and teacher of something which is in a way a very marginal subject, a language which was not our own, but we made our own, language like English. But during my tenure of teaching and researching in literature that came to be written in that language in English, I evolved certain ideas, part of which I want to present to you this evening. Forgive me, I have a little bad throat. But are you able to listen to me? Am I audible?
Yes, very loud.
Friends, I want to take you back a few years. A few years ago, a number of most respected writers and other artists writing in various Indian languages started returning their awards and honors which they had received during their lives and their writing careers. They were actually protesting against the atmosphere of intolerance that had come to prevail in the country a couple of years before they did this, when people in various walks of life and belonging to non-minority communities could be religious, could be linguistic, could be regional, and so on. When they started, things started happening against them, particularly against those people who called themselves rationalists and who carried out a campaign, sustained campaign against superstitious beliefs. And we know there are plenty of those, floating around. They have always been floating around, but suddenly there is a plethora. 4 days ago, I found something very interesting. A judge from Gujarat says, in one of his judgments, he observed, or while delivering a judgment, he observed that houses constructed with cow dung are immune to atomic radiation. Great research he must have done, and must be right, we don't know. So there was this campaign against superstition and such beliefs, and these people were then attacked and some of them were killed. An award-winning Kannada writer, that is Kulbargi ji, was killed once again by unknown persons. I don't know if they have been identified since then, for speaking out in his writings against such superstitious beliefs and religious bigotry, which is prevalent in all societies, but of late, more so in our society. Later, a prominent journalist, again from Karnataka, Gauri Lankesh, was also murdered in cold blood. The forces behind their killings were once again believed to be extremist organizations belonging to a certain community. Initial investigations have pointed out that Kulbargi's murder had a stamp similar to those of rationalists earlier killed, Pansare and Dabolkarji in Maharashtra. As a result of this, writers ranging from, I can recall offhand 2 names, Ashok Vajpayee ji to Nantara Sehgal, belonging to various Indian languages, returned their awards against the prevalence of such an atmosphere of intolerance and for no appropriate action being taken against those who had committed such heinous crimes. I was myself witness to one such ugly incident of intolerance when at a national seminar in Rajasthan a few years ago, a scholar of international repute was not allowed to speak only because she spoke against the forcible distortions and obliterations of historical facts being undertaken at large through official fora. One wonders if the new awardees since then, since those days when they returned the awards, new awardees since then have been asked to sign a bond stating that they would never return their awards. I don't know if such a bond has come about or not. The debate that began with the returning of these awards turned ugly when others, some of them having no sense at all of what is art, what is culture, and what is literature, jumped in, calling into question the very integrity of these writers. They said, who are these writers? What do they write? What reputation do they have? What is the significance of their writings, etc.? Some others called them anti-national or stooges of the political parties in opposition simply because they refused to kowtow the new agenda to turn this rainbow-colored nation into a monochrome. Observations were made about the writers indulging in politics, thereby bringing into focus more basic questions about the relationship between writers, their writings, and the society, particularly politics of the day. And to me, this question still remains very, very crucial to this day. Overnight, a host of good Samaritans surfaced like mushrooms, as if on a cue from somewhere, offering writers free and unsolicited advice, not only to shun politics in real life, but also to hold a position of strict political neutrality in their writings. This is not something new. This has been an advice given to people who write or who create art from time to time at many places. But coming as it did in a certain atmosphere, this naturally made alarms. According to these self-styled well-wishers of writers, writing should be primarily and exclusively for its own sake. My presentation, therefore, is about most crucial questions involving creative writing, namely, and I name some of these questions: who in his or her writings is committed to whom, under what circumstances and with what objectives, and above all, why is he or she committed? We may also call this who, what, and why questions of creative writing. In answer to these questions also lies the key to the appreciation and evaluation of a literary text. And to these I have added a temporal rider in the age of post-truth. Thereby I propose to show, through a look at the nature and function of literature, how a position of strict political neutrality on the part of writers being advocated so vociferously and obscenely, I would say, is not only not tenable, but also not desirable. I shall, while trying to answer the following questions, I raise some more questions. How a writer is committed to his place, people, and times. And how does he, she transcend his place, people, times, and events? How does he, she speak of events that have happened and through them also anticipate those that are likely to happen? Is this commitment his or hers to all sections of society, or is it selective in nature? If we look at the title that I have given to my presentation, we find there are three concept words in it: literature, commitment, and post-truth. Let me, to begin with, focus my attention on these most crucial terms in the title of this presentation. To begin with, literature to me is an expression, an imaginative one, of any experience by an individual member or a group of people in a society. This experience may be based on events that may have actually happened or not, or both. For instance, there is a big body of writing centered around the partition of the country. Tamas, Train to Pakistan, Aag Ka Darya, Zindagi Nama, Jhoota Sach, and Azadi are some of the texts written around that theme. Also, there are writings that we call collectively science fiction that may not be based on actual happenings, those that speak of super and supramen of other planets and galaxies. This experience may be expressed in any established form of creative writing. There are various forms in writers express themselves: poetry, plays, stories, novels, or biography, or in any other form, singular or hybrid, that a writer may evolve to suit his or her specific needs. Let me propose this as a kind of working definition of literature that I have given here. We might return to refine it further. Commitment, the second word, is promising or pledging to do or not to do something, to devote or dedicate oneself to one's actions, to a person, or to the promotion of a cause or a set of values. It has something to do with one's system of beliefs, worldview, or ideology. Once again, let us accept this as a broad general definition of the concept of commitment. What is post-truth? And what does it imply? Since it's a relatively new concept, new term, not so new, but currently in big vogue, it has come back since, say, 2016. First was used much earlier. So it is crucial for me. Therefore, let me dilate a little longer on this concept, also because ours has been proclaimed as the age of post-truth. I wish to clarify at the outset that I believe the term has little to do with the traditional philosophical debates about truth with T capital, or what is truth, ongoing since multi-millennia. It is to me a term that came into popular use around 2016 as a part of the larger phrase post-truth politics. To me, it is a part of the binary truthful, falsity, or honesty, lies, where the term truthful implies actually factually correct. The concept has to do with certain socio-political behavior, individual or institutional, wherein attempts are made deliberately to falsify information, mislead, make false claims with a view to obtaining short-term gains through manipulating public opinion and behavior within the larger goal of achieving societal and political hegemony in the struggle for power that has been a part of human struggle since evolution. I recall in his introductory remarks, Randhir ji talked about fake news, etc., which we all know is part of the same thing. And in this post-truth, media and the digital world has played a very significant role. And who amongst us can disagree with this? What has happened to the media and to the digital world in the last decade or so, maybe a little less, is self-evident to all of us. The term post-truth was preceded by an interesting and innocuous-looking phrase. And that phrase also was current. I don't know if some of you are familiar with this. To be economical in truth. To be economical in truth, which may have been first used by Edmund Burke long ago, but whose recent manifestation we saw during the Watergate scandal in USA and during certain debates in the British Parliament. To be economical in truth means simply telling lies or withholding information deliberately. The earliest example of being economical on truth we find nearer home. We find it in the epic Mahabharata, where, if you are familiar with this context, where Dharmaraj Yudhishthir, sorry, give me a minute, I think I seem to have skipped a page, where Dharmaraj Yudhishthir tells Dronacharya that Ashwatthama mara gaya. Ashwatthama has been killed, withholding the crucial information that it was Ashwatthama the elephant that had been killed, deriving an unfair advantage in the war with Kauravas. That is, to me, an interesting example of to be economical in truth. To return to post-truth, a typical example with tragic consequences was when it was proclaimed during the Iraq war that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction, something which the perpetrators themselves denied later. Nearer home, despite an official inquiry into the fire in a train at Godhra, in which human lives were lost tragically, the finding of the committee was that it was an accident. However, it was alleged that it had been the handiwork of a minority community group and tragic consequences followed. Most recently, attempts have been made to create a post-truth by lawyers, and this happened right under our eyes in the last 15, 20 days. The lawyers of Shankar Mishra, and accused for having urinated on a female passenger in a flight from New York to Delhi. His lawyers stated that the female passenger had urinated on herself. A few days ago, something that I referred to, a judge in a court in Gujarat stated that houses made from cow dung are immune to atomic radiation, which is as much a post-truth as saying that cow is the only animal that exhales oxygen. Having defined these basic terms, let me now turn to the creative process and analyze the construction and character of a piece of literature. In more fancy terms, we could call this the architectonics and aesthetics of a work of literature. Literature, let me put it as straight as possible at the very outset, is an indicator of the development and evolution of a human sensibility of the society that produces it. Look at the great classics from Greece, from India, from elsewhere, from within many cultures within India. You know, think of Sangam poetry, think of Tolkapiam, think of Mahabharata, think of Ramayana, think of Iliad, and so on. They are all indicators of the evolution of a society at a certain, up to a certain stage. It is the result of conscious activity on the part of its authors. This is a crucial point, friends, for me. Big deal, you would say, but I wish to submit that there is no dearth of writers who believe that writing is more instinctive than conscious or contrived. To me, however, there is nothing farther from truth than the claims made by some writers that they did not write their poems or stories attributed to them, but the poems and stories wrote themselves. This is a very fancy phrase bandied about. My poems write themselves, and they simply penned them. I once met a poet from Rajasthan who claimed that all his poems appeared in his head, fully formulated, comma, full stop, and lines included, and he simply transcribed them. However, I believe a literary composition, maybe a poem, a play, a story, or even a novel, to be a coolly calculated, deliberate activity, almost as deliberate as a well-planned murder, where the murderer chooses carefully not only the weapons, but also when and where and how to use them. Maybe more of this later, but I am ruling out at the very outset the intuitive and instinctive nature of creative writing. Why is that a piece of literature? Why is that a piece of literature is a conscious, deliberate activity? It is so, I believe, because its author, a poet, a playwright, or a novelist, is himself or herself a societal being and wants to say something, convey something to his or her readers or listeners. He or she is already involved in a number of relationships when he comes to write. He is a son or a daughter, brother or a sister, father or mother, boss or employee, teacher or student, etc. All literature, let us not forget, is created within the framework of these existing social relations and the processes underlying them. From Kabir to Ken Saro Viva, from Krishna Sopti to Krishna Sopti, from Nanak to Namdev to Neruda, from Shakespeare to Shelley to Shobha De, from Marquez to Manto to Manju Kapoor, all of them and the rest of them too. What to do? Communicate something consciously and not incidentally. In some of their writings, the messages may be straight, while in others it would be subtle and implicit. Simple messages bring to my mind the tales of Panchatantra, for instance, where the writer was not sure if the message has gone home. In the last line, he or she very clearly wrote, Lalach buri bala hai, or some such thing. Aesop's fables do the same thing. But in some, the message may be subtle or implicit. Thus, a message is an integral and significant part of a piece of literature. That is what I believe. In fact, to me, real worth of a literary work may lie only therein. In fact, I recall in 1974, a scholar, a woman scholar, Joan Rockwell, I think, brought out a book called Fact in Fiction, where she said, if you want to find out the real worth of a literary discourse, find out the Weltanschauung, or the worldview of the writer, the attitude of the writer. Thus, a piece of literary writing is a social document. It is also a societal document. And I'll make a little distinction about this a little later. It is written by someone, for someone, and to communicate something. It is therefore a deliberate act of social communication. Events, great or small, in the history of a society are the sources of inspiration for its writers, who try to meet the challenges of their times and that tell the readers the truth about their world and voice their concerns about the future. The great epics of ancient Greece, or of India for that matter, rich in variety, lofty in thought, and universal in comprehension, reflect the great ancient civilizations of Greece and India. The Iliad, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Sangam poems. The writers of Renaissance in Europe, Leonardo da Vinci, Dante, Shakespeare, reflected its socio-political spirit of the times. The socio-political spirit unleashed by the French Revolution is captured prominently by British Romantic writers. Balzac believed that he was a mere amanuensis, mere recorder of facts to the French society, which was the true historian, he said. And Engels claimed that he could learn more from about the French society from the literary writings of Balzac and others than from professional historians, economists, and statisticians. Earlier, his friend Karl Marx had paid a similar tribute to the British novelists of the 19th century. To cite examples from our own times, The Assassin's Song by M.G. Vasantji, that's a novel that came out in 2007. He's a Canadian writer of Indian origin. And A Thousand Splendid Suns also came out in 2007 by Khaled Hosseini, both published in 2007, are both significant pieces of literary writing reflecting the reality of Gujarat in India and Afghanistan, respectively. More significantly, all literature is about people. And even when nominal subjects may appear to be animals or non-humans, stories about animals like Panchatantra or Aesop's fables, George Orwell's Animal Farm, or a book like Jonathan Swift's Seagull are not about animals, but about men and women. And so are works of science fiction speaking of superhumans inhabiting other planets or galaxies. Give me a second, sir. Even the latest subgenre of cyberpunk fiction is basically about humans and not about machines. Literature is about people, their tensions, their conflicts, their rational and contrary behavior, their hopes and fears, their successes and failures, their smiles and tears, and it results from their real or imaginary activities. Thus, at the bottom of all literary activities is man. Man includes, of course, all genders. Again, literature may be about burning issues of the day. A famous African writer, Chinua Achebe, once observed that all literature is about the burning issues of the day, implying thereby that it is basically about the present. Even when it may speak of the past, writers invoke the past only to subserve the present. Basing a book around the times of Mahabharata today, a writer has a contemporary purpose in mind. This is what I believe. Often comes an example to my mind because you may know a family where there is some contradiction going on or some conflict going on, and somebody may observe, Bhai Sahab, unke ghar mein to Mahabharat macha hua hai. There is a contemporary purpose of invoking Mahabharat there. Or somebody may try to act very smart with another person, and he may say, Dekho, mere saath shakuni mama wala vyavahar mat karo. Again, we are invoking the past, something from the past to subserve a present purpose. Moreover, all literature is about, first of all, it is about physical needs, food, clothing, shelter, sex, and second, about feelings, love, affection, anger, jealousy, rivalry, domination, etc. In fact, Manto speaks about this. He says, जिंदगी में सिर्फ दो तरह की भूख होती है, एक पेट की भूख होती है और दूसरा उसने कहा सेक्स की या ह्यूमन रिलेशंस या लव की भूख होती है. All literature is about these and their interrelationships with one another. Even science fiction is not free from these. You read science fiction and you read machines are jealous of one another. You read that machines make love to one another, etc. In other words, there is no surrealistic halo around a piece of literature, however significant or seminal it might be. In it are inherent joys and sorrows, tears and smiles, love and hate, will to win or fear to lose, increased heartbeats of expectations or sinking intuitions of apprehensions, euphoria of sharing or shimmering snatching, all very human and earthy activities. And there is nothing metaphysical or ethereal about literature. Any piece of literature is also a societal document. Let me try and make distinction from what I had said earlier, social document, where it said it is written by someone for someone with a message. Any piece of literature is also a societal document, although it may carry the name of one or two individuals as its creators. All literary activity is what I call Panchayati Shatranj, a game of collective chess, in which not only two players play, but a whole lot of spectators also contribute by suggesting moves. Friends, you may have seen in the streets, gali mohalle mein log chess khelte hain, चारपाई पे बैठे हैं, सामने तिपाई पे there are chessmen lying, two people are playing, 8, 10 people are watching. One of the participants picks up a piece and tries to put in a particular square. Somebody holds him, अबे क्या कर रहा है, मर जाएगा. He is telling him that that piece may be sacrificed. So actually there are 10 people playing. All those who are around, they are also participating. And this is what I believe is what literature is about. Similarly, not just writer, but sorry, something has gone wrong. What happened?
You are audible, sir, and also visible. Please carry on.
Something has gone wrong here. I don't know. Anyways, if you can correct it from that angle, fine. Otherwise, I will go on. I don't want to waste people's time. So not just a writer, not just a group of people around him or her, not just his community or the nation, but perhaps the whole humanity contributes to what he or she writes. What has gone wrong? I don't know. Yeah, he's come back. And not just his contemporaries, but also people from the past, those who, Alakhayam, having written and have moved on, also play part in the writing of a text. Let me dilate a little more on this Panchayati Shatranj aspect of creative writing, a little more to show what do I actually mean. Shakespeare, for instance, drew his material from the sources. One of the historians called Holinshed. So he drew themes of his plays from Holinshed's Chronicles, being only one of them. In that sense, his plays are not just his alone, but also of Holinshed. Similarly, Grish Karnad writes a play called Tughlaq, basing it on a historical figure. I'm sure he researched so much, and all those books he read of the people he consulted are also contributors to that book. Tamas by Bhisham Sani is based on facts from the history of partition of India. I recall one very interesting observation in this context. Krishna Soptiji, one of the top novelists, Indian novelists writing in Hindi, who unfortunately is no more, has a very beautiful novel about 19th century Delhi called Dilo Danish. And Krishna Soptiji, from whom I drew a lot of affection, once told me, Harish, I sat for months together in the Harding Library in Delhi just to find out what was the environment in Delhi in 19th century. How did people speak? What did they eat? What did they wear? How did they interact with one another? Including the details of sweets, which were the favorites of people. So writers always also take quotations from other books that are embedded or deliberately put into their books. Epigraphs, for instance, metaphors and similes are borrowed too. We designate this phenomenon as borrowing or influence, or we now have a very fancy term, intertextuality. It is in this sense that all literature is a Panchayati Shatranj, that is my own stories. I write some stories in Hindi. I have a collection of stories in which there are stories about 1984 massacre of Sikhs. I drew so much from historical facts and journalistic reports and so on while writing those stories. Let me now move on and talk about commitment, the second significant term in the title of this presentation. Let me also examine as to when in human history did literature and commitment bit come to itself. Also, whether this element of commitment is optional and can be removed from a literary text at will and thereby hangs a tale. You see, I'm a storyteller basically. I will tell you a story. Let us imagine a group of most primitive humans, one of the earliest, whose be-all and end-all appeared to be just to procure food, distribute it among the members of the group for their sustenance and survival. On a particular day, when the procurers of food, some people amongst them who had been assigned this duty, had to work extra hard to get food, say, hunt and kill an animal, one amongst them, when they had brought it and food was being served, one of them insisted to be served a larger portion than served to others who had not gone on the hunt. And this was contrary to the existing practice of distributing food equally among all the members. Since that one demanding a larger share also happened to be the strongest physically, others could not do much about it, although it meant that one of them, perhaps the weakest, had to go half hungry. The next day, this weaker fellow offered to read out a song to his fellow members after they had, had their food. They just sat down, wherein he had lamented his lot and had also protested against the injustice meted out to him by giving him less share of the food. Maybe in the same song, he also told the other members that their turn would come soon and they too would be deprived of their legitimate share of the food unjustly. Thus was born the first piece of literature in the community. a beginning had been made, since it was born out of a situation involving others in the groups. It was societal in nature, and it reflected the relationship between literature and society, whatever literature meant at that time, whatever society meant at that time. Maybe this song led to the composition of another, this time by the one who had sought the larger portion of the food and who had been lambasted in the song. Maybe in this song, the person defended his act of demanding more. Then maybe a third person came, a third song came to be composed that defined it, either of the two positions, and so on. In course of time, two types of songs came about to be, one by those who had their way in the group by force, and another comprising those who could not because of lack of power. Thus was born the class character of literature and culture, with respective commitments to the two kinds of compositions, one by haves and one by the have-nots. Since then, commitment has been an integral part of literature, all literature, everywhere. Since our societies are still class societies, commitment cannot be sequestered from creativity. We also know that even within a modern nation state, this concept which the Westerners gave to us, nation, which we may indicate with a capital N, there are many more nations within the same nation. There are many more nations which we may write with a small n. Thus, women, Dalits, tribals, people belonging to religious and other kinds of minority, for instance, are all such nations within the same nation with a capital N. And commitment to these nations with small n by writers is a reality that cannot be denied. In this commitment, writers not only incorporate and reflect whatever is happening on the surface of the society, but also focus on the processes that underlie these surface events. In this sense, writers anticipate what Aristotle had called events that might be. This may make a writer a prophet. The impending military coup in Nigeria, in his novel, A Man of the People, made Achebe such a prophet. That is 1968 or something. Through their commitments, writers not only show the reality and the underlying processes, but also try to persuade us to act in a certain manner. Dickens' focus on the conditions of the poor in the 19th century England persuaded the people and authorities to change the poor laws. I forget the name of a text by an American writer who focused on the cruelty to animals in slaughterhouses. And this led to a major reform in the meat industry in America. This is the activist function of a writer. Ngugi wa Thiong'o and Dennis Brutus are two such writers from Africa whom I consider activists. There are so many. Writers persuade us to act in a certain manner to change the power structures in their societies. This is the revolutionary function of a writer. Pash and Ravi, which come to my mind from Punjab in India, Kulburgi, another, Ken Saro-Wiwa from Nigeria and Africa, are such revolutionary writers who fought for the devolution of power more justly through their pen and made the supreme sacrifices of their lives. They were killed. But then let us not conclude that all writers are prophets. All writers are activists or revolutionaries. There are some who are on the other side, the side of those social forces that try to suppress people. To take a contemporary example, the writings of the Cuban writer Reinaldo Arenas, are counter-revolutionary in their character. Writings of George Orwell and Arthur Koestler during the Cold War period that attempted to depict the Soviet Union as evil empire were such writings. Partisan. The collection of stories by an example a few years ago, 2 years ago, collection of stories by a man Shekhar Suman Hansda, which was awarded by Sahitya Akademi, falls in the same category. He portrayed the tribals in such poor light that people all over protested, and yet he got away with the award. Thus we see that writers, all writers, are committed to their times, to their people, to their societies, to their nations, and to the entire humanity at the same time. The people's way or the other, one way or the other, people's way or the tyrant's way. Thus writers persuade their readers one way or the other through their worldviews, through their ideologies, or to put in a more common parlance, through their politics. This is how Ngugi wa Thiong'o, one of the great writers of our times from Kenya, also a social thinker. Some of us know him through that famous book of his, Decolonizing the Mind. This is what Ngugi wa Thiong'o said in his book called Writers in Politics. Every writer is a writer in politics. The only question is what and whose politics. Thus, we also evaluate writers on the touchstone of the same criterion. Writers are prophets of hope and of doom, revolutionaries or renegades. Revolutionaries or renegades, according to the Weltanschauung or their worldviews. And now let me say something about literary commitment during the times of post-truth. What kind of commitment does post-truth expect from the people at large and writers in particular? Post-truth, we have defined above as an attempt to spread lies and to withhold factual advantage to one group over others. Generally, the powerful over the powerless, leaders over the masses. This is an attempt at times subtle, but other times quite brazen, and to create an unequal relationship, not only in devolving power, but also for distributing resources more unequally, thereby deepening the economic divide further. And this, we know, leads to hegemony, dominance, politically, societally, and culturally, of those who have less economic power by those who have more of it. Thus, the practice of the concept of post-truth is an attempt to divide the world perpetually into the weak and the strong, to put it very mildly. If this be so, the writers, instead of hanging their shoes, will have to continue to work through their writings to persuade people to be activists in the cause of resisting the designs of those who practice and support post-truth. They would have to continue to compose songs of revolution to bring about a more just world order. We would need to produce more Pash, more Ravis, more Kansare Vivas, because it is they who inspire us through their writings, even when they are not around. Give me a minute, sir. Let me, before I close, read a poem from Punjabi, in Punjabi from Pash. Interestingly, the poem is called Pratibadhata, which in Hindi means commitment. The title is commitment itself. And in Punjabi, it reads like this. Then I'll give you a freehand translation in English also. He uses two very crucial words, Sachi and Muchi. Very interesting from colloquial Punjabi. Sachi means truth and Muchi means make-believe, or what we call as post-truth. Asi ਐਵੇਂ ਮੁੱਚੀ ਦਾ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਡੋਲਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਲੀਆਂ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬੜਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਪਿੱਠ ਤੇ ਉਭਰੀਆਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੀਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਲਾਸਾਂ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਜ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਕਾਗਜ਼ਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਹਿਮਿਆ ਤੇ ਸੁੰਗੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ, ਬਰਾਬਰੀ, ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਹੋ, ਐਸਾ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੱਚੀ ਮੁੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸੂਰਜ ਤੇ ਹਵਾ ਤੇ ਬੱਦਲ ਘਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਖੇਤਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੰਗ ਸੰਗ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹਕੂਮਤਾਂ, ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਤੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਤੱਕਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਡਾਢਿਓ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਸੱਚੀ ਮੁੱਚੀ ਦਾ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਦੇ ਮੁਕੱਦਮੇ 'ਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਟਾਊਟ ਦੀ ਗਵਾਹੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪਟਵਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਈਮਾਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, ਜਾਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆੜਤੀ ਦੀ ਕਸਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਤਲੀ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੱਚ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਗੁੜ ਦੀ ਪੱਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਣ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹੁੱਕੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਕੋਟੀਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮਿਲਣੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਮਹਿਬੂਬ ਦੇ ਹੋਠਾਂ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਮਲਾਈ ਵਰਗੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ। A very tentative translation, and I end with that. We want not anything of the make-believe sort, like there are swellings on our biceps, like there are whiplashes printed on the backs of slaves, like there is our future scarred and constricted, gasping for breath between the pages of promissory notes. We want life, equality, or something like that. We want it for real, for true, something like the sun, the wind, and the clouds that live around us in fields and hearths. We want for real to see around us regimes, trust, joy, or cruel people. We want to see all this for true, for real. We want not anything of the sort, like there is the evidence of touts in cases relating to liquor, like there is the honesty of the patwari, like there are the oaths of the middlemen. We want for real, for true, like there are grains of sand in jaggery, like there is nicotine in hookahs, like there is cream on the lips of the beloved in moments of union. We want not to read books hanging from the baton ends of policemen. We want not to sing songs of skull under threats of military jackboots. We want to touch for real the truth, our caressed fingertips, the music resonating over trees, to lick salt from the smoke of tear gas shells, to taste one's own blood on one's own tongue cannot be the fun for anyone. But we want not anything of that sort. We want for real, for true life, socialism, or something like that. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a very deep presentation, I would say, and full of
I'm sorry I
insights.
took more than what I should have.
Yes, thank you. And I can recall one important quotation by Derrida, who says, literature is the most interesting thing in the world, maybe more interesting than the world. So this is a strange institution called literature. And how beautifully you conceptualize the idea of post-truth, dressed from past and in our existential crisis. So it is a kind of invitation for all of us to visualize your insights in a very significant manner. So we have with us many respected discussants. So first I would like to invite Jernail Singh Aanand ji, and then Professor Meera Chakrabarti, and then Aanand Giri. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to listen to Dr. Harish Narang after not a very long time. We met him only in November. And it was very illuminating, I would say, his comments, his observations on literature, commitment, and the post-truth, idea of post-truth. In this connection, I may like to say a few words. When we talk of post-truth, I start thinking of pre-truth also. There was a time, I wonder if poets were ever tolerated by the society. So just a few days back, I just penned down a poem, which I think encapsulates this idea. And it gives another dimension to the saints also. saints, prisoners. You can just go through with me in this poem. The primeval rebels of times out of joint. Our times are out of joint, no doubt. So I'm talking of some rebels. The seers who found the lap of nature safer. The seers who found the lap of nature safer than the prison of life were the first revolutionaries who remain still unacknowledged and undesignated as the primeval fighters of the world. Men who did not agree with the ways of the world. A saintly man does not agree with what people are doing. Men who did not agree with the ways of the world, where evil, deceit, and crime ruled, had in store a life of exile, either the prison or in the valleys of Himalayas. A man who loves truth. Only prison is the place for him. A prisoner isolated from human flow lives on state in charities, frugal allowances. But because he is alone, he finds himself closer to God in this exile, next only to uniting with him. Those who wrung their face away in order not to see the gnawing truth, the bitter truth of society, people who turned their faces away, those who wrung their face away in order not to see the gnawing truth, preferred to seerize themselves, seerize themselves rather than react and land in mortal prison. If they had reacted, they would have been in prison. The life of self-chosen exile from the crippling ways of the world exalted the escape. They escaped. We exalted it. The life of self-chosen exile from the crippling ways of the world exalted the escape and put them in a coveted position to comment on human breath and its powerful adversary, death. Saints, talked about life, death, all that. The other course was, which we follow, most of us, whether it is pre-truth, truth, or post-truth, whatever. The other course was, why not turn our life into a quest? Retire within, conjure our gods, and pray for our own peace. And peace to the world at large, which we are doing in large numbers. Those who could not live with this untruth and considered escape to valleys unwarranted. Now I am talking of what Dr. Harish said, commitment. This is what I'm about that. Those who could not live with untruth, jo bole, and considered escape to valleys unwarranted, left, when they left this world, left the prison walls chronicled in controlled rhetoric, resonant with embittered truth. पाश को पढ़ रहे थे अभी. They were martyrs to the times out of joint, times shaken out of sense, where all is well that ends well, all is well that ends well, where even gods are camouflaged, and wisdom looks askance when it faces the mirror. So this was my poem, which I think makes a comment in its own way on the situation which is prevailing. Either you leave this place or you will land in prison, you fight. So if you are a man of commitment, Dr. says very rightly, literature has a commitment. And if we have no commitment, we may be writing anything, but not literature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can see one kind intervention in the chat box. Yes, Professor Swaraj, please unmute yourself and. Professor Swaraj. May I read the
Please.
chat box? So he's asking Professor Narang, your own commitment to values, which are at a discount of these times evident in each word you uttered. An important issue today is what do you what to do with these deep fakes, as AI has unleashed a world where post-truth may appear quite innocent.
May I respond?
Yes, please.
My response is very simple. And to me, it will work. You know, there are deep fakes. AI has now unleashed other forces and so on. If writers continue to focus on the contemporary societal reality and faithfully depict them, but not end there. Even depiction will be fine, but not end there, and evaluate them on the touchstone of certain values, which we may call as Shashwat. You know, whether we like it or not, there are certain immanent values. Equality, justice for all. Equality, justice for all this touchstone will then, in small ways, contradict however deep the fake news or other things are. I somehow recall a line from Dushyant Kumar, who said something like this, Yaro ek patthar to uchhalo, asman mein bhi chhed ho sakta hai. So writers should continue to throw those little stones which may pierce the skies of lies.
Sir, may I add something?
Hanji,
If you allow me.
Raju, namaste.
Namaste, sir. May, sir, but the only thing that I have to ask in this context is that, you know, AI is going to redefine the way we look at the world, the way we look at the whole idea of truth. And, you know, therefore, I believe it is going to cause a lot of havoc. I don't know how it is going to be, what way we are going to react, and how it is going to change the whole, you know, epistemological world around us. I mean,
So Raji, so long we are humans, AI may bring in robots who may replace humans. It may be a society of total non-humans. It may come about. That I don't know about. But until that happens, so long we are humans, and so long humans are writers. I don't know about that also. You know, AI, this chat gap that has come about and so on, may even bring about literature created in non-human manner. So long we are humans, and so long we are creating, humans are creating literature, I have faith, I have hope.
Yeah, we all should have faith. And I am really, sir, very, very deeply impressed by your talk. And I've already written that your commitment is visible in each word that you speak. And that is what we love you for, sir. Thank you.
Professor Meera Chakrabarti.
Thank you, Professor Harish. Thank you, Randhir. Harish ji, first a little bit of correction. It is Kalburgi, not Kulburgi.
I'm sorry. I must apologize. Since I'm not a Kannada speaker, I stand corrected. आगे से मैं कलबर्गी ही कहूँगा.
No, I worked with him because we were writing on Vachana poems, which is rebel poems, of course, the Basaveshwara and his group. So we worked with him for a long time. So therefore, and then in South Indian way, you know, the name of the place is added. Kalburgi is a place like Gulbarga. Yeah. So therefore the name, it is added with the name. So Kalburgi is a place. That is having said that.
I thank you heartily for.
No, it's okay. That is not at all no issue. But I would like to see when you have taken the example of Mahabharata, the Ashwatthama, it's called Hata iti Gajaha. Ashwatthama mara gaya, theek hai. But do you see a pattern of alienation in the post-truth phenomenon? Because basically, as we all agree, you also have mentioned that that to locate writers' identity within an inescapable human essence, that of course we all agree with. But then the alienator is alienated by this essential othering, and therefore, when Dronacharya wanted to really, Ashwatthama really wanted to be, has to be alienated from that context. Therefore, if a post-truth is created, which is the post-truth in today's terminology. So, do you see a pattern of alienation?
Of course, that is the basic purpose, to alienate people from themselves and their contemporary reality. You know, Dronacharya in a certain context was a huge warrior leader, and he had to be alienated, if not eliminated, which, so of course, alienation of individuals, of communities, of people from their present context is at the core of post-truth. Yeah,
that is why Kalburgi died, because that was one way of alienating.
You know, all kinds of atrocities are done to people. I named Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken Saro-Wiwa was a Nigerian writer who carried out a campaign against shell companies which were extracting, you know, oil and spoiling the environment of Ogun region in Nigeria. At their behest, those transnationals, those multinationals, he was jailed by the then dictator of Nigeria, Sani Abacha. The whole world, almost 100 leaders from the world, including United Nations, appealed to Sani Abacha not to hang Ken Saro-Wiwa. He did. Pash was killed by terrorists in Punjab. So was Ravi. Gugiwati Ango was put in maximum prison for just writing a play. You know that.
Yes, of course. So, and his books are very famous. You know, the Black Skin and whatever. I just forget the name of the
No, that is somebody else. Black Skin and White Mask is by you know, this Algerian fellow who has this book. I forget his name. Gugiwati Ango's most famous book is, of course, Decolonizing the Mind. But he is a novelist. He is a playwright.
Right.
Recently, not recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, his own part of autobiography came out, The Birth of a Dreamer, wherein he shows how his mind evolved and so on.
Yeah, you mean Amamanda, who was talking of the yellow sun and all that. So, yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Randhir.
Professor Gyan.
Yeah, it is Franz Fanon, as somebody tells me. I had forgotten the name. Black Skins, White Masks is by Fanon also.
Fanon, yes, right, Fanon.
Yes, Dr. Gianluigi.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was really very interesting, and I have taken many notices. I have no particular question. I much appreciated everything, and I would like to thank you very much for your brilliant exposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other respected participant would like to share or comment anything? Dr. Paneet Jaggi is also with us.
Oh, Puneetji.
Ananta bhai, are you there? Yes, Miniti Pradhan ji is raising her hand. So please ask your question.
Yes, Randhir, I am here because my internet might be unstable, so I can share one thought. Is it okay?
Please.
Hello, Minati. So now, Professor, I joined your discussion a bit late. I am Aanand here.
G.
So in terms of and commitment, now mainly our notion of commitment is a political commitment. And but there is also limits to the political. And is that any commitment and a mutual critically, so that commitment is able to free itself from its tendency towards closure and self-justification. And finally,
I'm sorry, I could not hear the full question, but I beg to differ with him. This commitment is not political. By politics, when I use that word, I am not thinking of political parties like Congress or BJP, this or that. I am primarily thinking of politics as the instrument of devolution of power in a society. How power is divided in a society to various participants, various sections, is what I call politics. And the writer's commitment is to that politics, not to this party or that party, this group or that group, this religious group or that. And that commitment to society is to those societal values, which I tried to sum up in one word, that they are immanent. There are certain ways, there are certain values through which society cannot, from which society cannot escape. When people come together to form a society, a community, each one of them surrenders a part of his or her freedom in order to derive the advantages of collective working, being together, and the benefits of that being together must be distributed in a certain manner. That is the societal value, and writers must. This is one example that I have in mind when I say every writer is a writer in politics. The question is what and whose politics. I don't mean politics in the narrow sense of politics of today.
Yes, the last question, Miniti Pradhanji.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Randhir, for giving me the opportunity. I would like to thank Professor Harish Narang for his very insightful deliberation. So I have a very simple question. It is like, no, in this era of lies, propaganda, and fake news, how do we get truth in the text or its meaning? So that was my question. Thank you.
You see, that is a very important question. And I will try and answer it through something which I have practiced in all my teaching career. But I will first refer you to an advertisement of a paint. On TV, we sometimes see, I think, Asian Paint or something. They come out with the beautiful picture of a house, and then comes the punchline, har ghar kuch kehta hai. I say, when I read a text, I always ask myself a question: what does this text say to me? And the answer to that will get me at the root of what the writer is probably trying to say. Everything else is a rigmarole. You know, the characters, the events, the dialogues, the language, the metaphors, the similes, etc. I am sorry, my this says that it is running out, my battery, but I hope I have made myself clear that I do believe that we can get at the truth of a text if we just remove the rigmarole and ask about the basic question. That is what I meant when Joe Rockwell said to find out the real worth of a text is to ask the question, what is the writer's attitude to life, attitude to society or societal values?
Thank you so much. Any other friend would like to? Yes, Rashmi Bajaj ji.
Rashmi ji, namaskar.
Namaskar ji.
It's such a pleasure to see you over there. And also, Arpana ji is there.
Yes, she is there too.
Nearly 50 years.
No, it's half number of years actually.
More.
We met in Shimla actually, Staff College Shimla, right? Academic Staff College Shimla. Yeah. Yes. So very thought-provoking and stimulating discourse, as it is always in your case. And then the topic too is very important, post-truth. And I think as we proceed along during next few years, post-truth is going to be the topic of deliberations for all of us, because the thing is that there are so many, kind of truths now, so many shades of truths are becoming available to us, and where to put the filter and what kind of filter, because the social media, particularly, this kind of social media presentations, YouTube channels and podcasts and other things, they really make this difficult to judge as to where to put what should be the filter and where do we put that. And in addition to that, I realize another thing, that the issue is becoming very complicated, Professor Saab, because now we have started realizing that there are no absolute truths. We always knew that there were no absolute truths, but every day with this aspect coming forward, with another aspect coming forward, even the scientists saying one thing one day, next day revising their statements and all that, this scene is going to be far more complicated than we can simply think of. Like, I don't think, say, after 5-10 years, anybody would be able to lay claim to the fact that his or her truth is the truth and the other truths are post-truths, that there are no alternative truths. Maybe we are heading towards a time when you will have many alternative truths existing together, and then we will be saying, yes, ye bhi ho sakta hai, haan, this is your truth, that is his truth, that is my truth. So these are very interesting times where we finally land. Let us see. But the thing is that it was a very stimulating lecture, and I think we need more and more deliberations from different platforms on this very topic. Yeah, please.
This my truth, that your truth, and that his has always been there. Has always been there.
Yeah.
Only it is becoming, as you rightly say, more complicated.
Yeah.
With technology coming in and more difficult.
Want to say something?
Yes, I think
maybe
is.
Yeah.
So we should wind up. So thank you, everybody. And I can recall one beautiful quotation by Salman Rushdie. about the truth of the tale. He says, literature is where I go to explore the highest and the lowest places in human society and in the human spirit, where I hope to find not the absolute truth, but the truth of the tale, of the imagination and of the heart. So thank you everybody for your kind participation. On behalf of GSDS Weekly Forum, we are grateful to your kind presentation and participation, and we look forward for your kind engagement. So thank you, WARSI Sahab, Professor Meera Chakravarti, Harish Sahab, Jernail Singh Aanand, Professor Gianluigi, Dr. Devendra Tiwari, Anu Chatterjee, Banerjee ji, Jernail Singh Aanand ji, and all. We look forward for your kind participation in coming week. So thank you so much.